Live.
All right, guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. We consider ourselves to be decent human beings, so we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence, anything like that. We do embrace, however, free speech and also criticism, even if it is directed at us, if it is factual and constructive criticism. We focus on Islam exclusively. So if you're curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. Now, we don't attack, which is aggressive, destructive, and antagonistic, neither Islam nor Muslims. We ask questions and show facts. We refute false claims and present the reality of Islam, which is political Islam. We inspect, investigate, research, analyze, and then report and critique on Islam, the ideology, not the people. Now, the live stream goes to YouTube and Facebook, and there are three ways that you can participate in this. Either you join us in the live written chat, you can join the panel during the live show, or later on watch and comment the archive. And anyone can join to comment, critique, contribute, or question. This is not a Dawah channel with censorship. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is free. The way we work is usually we have some news, some Krazy Komments, a segment where we go and read the Quran, and then a discussion on the theme of the month, followed by integrating the live chat, ending with a Hadith of the week. If this is not enough Islam for you, there's still the Discord channel where you can discuss with us without anything being recorded. See you later and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
I love the intro. I was just going to say, this is an amazing intro.
Pio, thank you very much. Again, you heard the reaction from Mr. R. His first name is Moose and his middle name Staff, whatever that means.
Moose staff, as in staff, the staff that Moses was holding, and R, as in the reaction. It could be excitement, or it can be fear, or it can be awe.
I thought this is Mrs. Moose doing a pole dance.
Wait, what?
Don't worry about it. Hello, people. Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We've got a packed program again for you tonight. And what we do is, as I've just outlined here, we do, news items, one or two or something like this. Then we do some Krazy Komments. Then we go to the Koran Zone. And I noticed that we're almost a third into the Quran now. So we're going to end now the Quran chapter 8 and going into Quran chapter 9. Wonderful stuff. And then we're going to be looking at the theme of the month, which is still Dawah, how Dawah is being distributed. Today it is wasted Dawah in action, because we're going to be looking at a video by Mr. Imran Hussein, who is on his channel Epistemics, creating short videos which are perfect for being commented on, and which are a little bit silly and a little bit primitive, but it's good stuff anyway. Good evening to the panel members. Good evening to the chat members. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for your attention, staying with us, looking at what we have to offer regarding Islam. As always, if you have questions, if you have suggestions, go ahead, ask them. You have three different ways of interacting with us. Hello, guys. Hello, Mr. Rob Speakers, sir. How are you doing today?
Good evening. Good evening to the panel. Good evening to all the viewers. Yeah, all good. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the show.
And Mustafa.
Good evening, everybody. And there is an odd face that I see at stops over here. What is this face?
I'm just looking at the chat, okay, because I didn't really spot all the changes that you guys made in the intro, but it still looks incredibly impressive. So it's really great. Okay, let's go into the Gin and Tonic Show. It is Friday. It is the 18th of December. Christmas is almost upon us. We see the obligatory signs Muslims don't go and say Christmas, don't celebrate Christmas, stay away from those Christians, don't take them as your friends, they are friends amongst themselves, don't go and celebrate Christmas. It's so pathetic.
One of what's funny is that there was a funny thing where Ayatollah, I think it was the recent one, where he said that it's okay to wish your Christians, what do you call it, Merry Christmas. There was a statement by that, I recall, wasn't there?
I don't know.
I actually recall something like that, yeah. So, again, this is modern, but at chapter 554, we're like, no friends, they're not your friends.
No. And it's so silly, but I'm not a Christian, but I can go and say Merry Christmas. What the hell? Why not? It's not that I am declaring there is no God but God, and He was born now, and I believe all the fairy tales around these gods and goddesses. No, it's just a thing. It's like, I don't know. I always say it's like saying at sunset. We use the word sunset. Now we know the sun doesn't set. We know that it's factually incorrect, but we still go and we use this.
Mm-hmm.
So what? There's no big deal. So anyway, and I can say, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, there's no meaning behind it. There's no deeper significance attached to those words. That's the only difference.
I actually had someone call me out and say, oh, but you're atheist. Why do you say, oh my God? I just said that it's just a figure of speech. It's just normal in language.
There's nothing that you are attributing to this. There's nothing that you're associating with it. There's nothing that you are declaring on top of the fact that you are saying, oh my God. So
exactly.
I can say, oh, my dragon. Okay, does that mean dragons exist? No, it doesn't. Okay, let's turn to the news. There's only 2 items that I picked up. If anybody else has something else, please do contribute. I found that, this is quite interesting, the Bank of England introduces Sharia banking. Can you believe it? I think they've lost the European banking, I don't know what it was. They had some institution or other sitting in the UK of the European finance system. I don't know what branch or section it was. So they've lost that. So now they need to make up for it. So they turn to the Middle East because they do have a lot of money in the UK from the Middle East. So what they're doing is they're introducing Sharia banking, which means that a Muslim can, put their money into the bank. Thank you very much. And then there's no interest. Instead, and this is the old thing that always used to get Rob so upset. Instead of calling it interest, they call it profit sharing, which is basically the same thing. It's just a rebranding or renaming exercise where instead of getting 5% interest up to 10,000 and 6 if you invest more, it's just you get more profit back the more you invest. So it's the same thing. It's just a different name. So.
And even the Dubai Islamic Bank did the same thing a few years ago. And it was just basically a rebrand, like with the Islam and everything. But it's just doing the same thing, practically, as most banks do.
Quite funny. And okay, I always need to, I don't know, do I need to give the background? I always think, okay, should I or shouldn't I? Well, I'm going to anyway, because Sharia banking is actually quite dangerous. Because if you, for example, if you take a loan on a house, you can't take a loan as such because you would not be able to repay it plus the interest to the bank. So what happens is the bank owns the property. In other words, the bank buys the house and then you pay back the bank. The problem is that you cannot take a mortgage or anything out of that because it's not in your possession yet. It's not in the papers. You don't own the bloody thing until the last cent has been repaid to the bank. So if anything goes wrong there, you are at the mercy of the bank. And that is one of the many dangers of Sharia banking. But a lot of Muslims don't want to see that. They only see the positive. So the second item I found is Muslim scholars warn against the Israel deals. Now, we all heard that there were a couple of declarations of normalization between Bahrain, between UAE and even from Saudi, which are now taking Israel as a fact, which are taking Israel as a country, and there's no point in going against it. It's a fait accompli. So there's it. But now, the IUMS, the International Union for Muslim Scholars. Okay, these are scholars who have studied fairy tales and got some sort of degree. And the president of the people who have studied all these fairy tales urges a solid stance to counter anti-Palestinian fronts to stop the formation of a new blockade against the Palestinian people. Now, that's so silly, because there's no such thing as Palestinian people. There's no Palestinian language, Palestinian culture, Palestinian food, Palestinian dress code. It's nothing than just Arab. So it's the same whether you go to Jordan, whether you go to Syria, whether you go, I don't know. There's no difference. There's no distinctively different Palestine anything. There are no known borders. It used to be southern Syria. It used to be a small area occupied by the Phoenicians. They used to be Greeks. And then Muslims occupied it and they called it then Palestine. And today it's just a political issue where they want to go and see Israel destroyed. So they call this area Palestine, which, well, just by chance coincides with the area of Israel. So it's silly.
And there was this, the daughter of the former Prime Minister, Maryam Nawaz Sharif's daughter, she did make a statement, I think, on Twitter about the normalization of, relations with Israel, and then she actually deleted it immediately because there was a strong reaction against it, especially in Pakistan. There are a few Pakistanis who are saying there's actually nothing wrong, even though you have an enmity against this state. There's nothing wrong with talking to them, or at least approaching them to the table, or making a deal with them that would benefit you. There's absolutely, and even if you're sympathetic to the Palestinian people, what if this opens the doors? Think of that possibility as well.
Yeah, but I think they have a problem with that, really. I don't know why this is so difficult for them. But yeah, it's weird. I don't know why they do it. I don't know why they still insist on this, and I don't know why they still say, yeah, we're not allowed to, we can't allow any kind of normalization, even if it is, like you say, beneficial for us. We're not going to do it. It's quite silly, it's short-sighted. So,
yeah, I think there was something. I think this author wrote that Arafat, when he declined the deal in the 90s. With the Israeli leadership as well as Bill Clinton, was because he was getting foreign aid in order to, the war itself was beneficial for him. So there was some interest in getting foreign aid and, using it, but never really doing anything about it. So there was some backhanded reason behind continuing the contract itself.
Yeah. Okay, the last item I have is Saudi, in other words, Saudi Arabia, the KSA, sacks, this is quite funny, 100 Islamic preachers for failing to condemn the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, this is from today, okay? So the Saudi government today sacked 100 imams and preachers who gave sermons in mosques in Mecca and Al-Qasim because they failed to condemn the Muslim Brotherhood as instructed. And this is what you can see in Al-Watan newspaper. And Saudi Arabia formally designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization in 2014 and banned it in the kingdom. Now, this is, to me, it's quite crazy because I don't know if this is just hoodwinking or pulling the wool over your eyes or what. I don't know, because the Muslim Brotherhood is the one who is trying to propagate Islam worldwide, and it used to be funded heavily. I mean, even Hitler used to fund them because he liked their ideas. But then they were also funded by the kingdom and by the Saud family. And I don't know since when this changed, or why this would have changed, or on what basis, or how. I have no idea. But now they say, well, 2014, and this, by the way, is also in the UAE. They're also considered a terrorist organization. How that works, I don't know. I've never been able to understand that.
Yeah,
you need a political commentator to explain this.
Yeah, I think their main operations are in Egypt, correct? Most of the operations.
Yes.
Yeah. I was very surprised at that too. Like when you told me this, and it's about time, but at the same time, it's very confusing.
Yeah. Okay, any other news that anybody wants to tell us about? Then we shall head off to the next section.
Nothing that I'm aware of at the moment.
Okay. Then let's head off to the next section.
Oh, I did, just as a side note. I had a little bit of time and I was chatting on a stream today with people, and long conversation with a guy that sort of was thinking out loud. And I think theists in general, and certainly Muslims, because I deal mostly with Muslims, have this idea that, atheists have faith. And I take faith to be believing something without good reasons and evidence. And I said, no, I don't agree with that. I think what we have is trust, and we have trust in evidence. And it's not to say that atheists can't have faith, but it's not the predominant factor of our lives. And typically when I use the word faith, it's in relation, and in fact, it's what theists use. They mean believing something. They don't like to use the word without good reasons and evidence, but that's ultimately what it means. And so we went backwards and forwards. I don't know if you guys have had this, but I think the idea here is to go, but hey, you atheists have also got that, so it's no good you criticizing us. But even if I were to grant that we both, quote unquote, have faith in as a general principle, which I don't think we do, but if that were the case, I've got, quote, faith in things that are observable, or certainly that are probable in reality. You only have, your faith is in something that is outside of reality, so you're one step removed. Even if I granted you that, I'm not prepared to grant you that by any stretch of the imagination, but even if I did, that would be, it still wouldn't be any better for you, let's put it that way.
Exactly.
No, I totally agree. No.
And the funny thing is, if I give them the definition that if every from a viewpoint of epistemology, you have belief, and then the subset is knowledge, and then the way that it works, if you have something that is verifiable and where you have the experience and everything, it becomes knowledge, and then if you can neither verify nor falsify, then this is considered to be faith, because faith is something that you cannot verify, nor can you falsify it. And a lot of especially Muslims, sort of reject this. And they say, no, that's not the case. It is only something where you don't have sufficient evidence. Yeah, but then this is just belief. There's no difference between faith and belief. And this is what they're trying to do. This is what that they think is going to save them. But that doesn't work. So faith is still something that is totally useless. You don't take a single decision in life based on faith. But the only thing is with the gods. This is quite strange. Yeah. Okay. This is something, and I'm trying frantically to get this bigger, and I can't, because I can't move this somehow. I can increase the size of this, but I can't move it around for some odd reason. I don't know why that is, or if I'm just being too stupid, or you really can't. I don't know. Because
you're still having a backwards and forwards with him even now.
Sorry?
Are you still having a backwards and forwards with Boma?
Yeah. Because I'm just trying to remind people of what a disingenuous and dishonest piece of shit this is. Because you can see here, okay, look, this is the video where he promises me he's going to send me a book if I buy this book that you see on the screen here. I bought the book. I sent him the receipt. And I said, where's my book? He says, well, you need to apologize. I said, what do you mean? What the fuck am I supposed to apologize for? I don't know. So he says, well, now you've insulted me. Now it's moving 1 month forward, 1 month forward, 1 month forward. So the delivery date was later and later. And the latest that he got to, because every time I responded, he added 1 month for some reason. So the latest that he got to was, I think, March or something of this year, because he was supposed to send it like in 2018. And then he said, no, it's going to be 2019, now it's going to be 2020, and I think it was March or April or something like this. But even now, half a year later, he still has not sent me the book. This is how dishonest some Muslims are. So don't come to me with your morality. Don't come to me with all these claims that an atheist doesn't have any basis for anything and only a Muslim does. Well, look here. Here's an example of somebody who goes against all moral standards. Let's just an example.
And is this person located in the same region as yourself?
No, he's in the States. He's in Texas.
I wonder what you could do to. I'll think of it. I'll actually look it up and let you know. Okay. Like
But it's a breach of contract, quite
breach of
clearly.
contract very clearly. So yeah, I don't know if you can. Yeah, we'll see into it. We'll see into it as we carry on.
Now, the video that we're going to look at today, which is the Dawah delivery, is by Imran Hussein on epistemics about atheists. Because he loves atheists. He loves talking about atheists. He doesn't understand them, but he loves talking about them. And these are some of the reactions on the video that you are going to see just now. So the best thing is he puts things simply. Well, yeah, he's a simpleton. He is direct, yeah, because he can't, put together a complex or something, thought pattern or anything. No beating beating around the bush. He directly asks people. I don't know why people needs to be in capitals. People to look into Islam as I believe it's the truth. Okay. If you sorry?
The ending is Jazakallah. You forgot the Jazakallah.
Oh, I forgot the Jazakallah. Anyway, so this is a reaction which I think is hilarious, as you will see just now in the video. What they say is, no atheist is an atheist without beliefs and blind faith. May Allah guide us all to the Siratul Mustaqim, the straight path. Amazing. And what is the reply? By JM Gamer. Something, Dr. Zakir Naik. So,
I can read this in Urdu. Hold on. हमें उल्लू बनाए बंद करो. हम इस्लाम के असलियत जानते हैं. It means don't make us, don't think we are fools. We know the reality of Islam. And the term for fools he uses is owl, because apparently in our culture, ullu or owl also means fool, but it also means an owl. I never understood that. But yeah, it's like, don't make us fools. We really know the reality of Islam.
Wow, of course, yes. But what I find significant is that this Zakir Naik guy, this total idiot, this charlatan, is still being used today. I mean, how many times do you need to refute? How many times do you need to rebut or ridicule someone before people stop using this, before people start understanding that there is something wrong here? And what I don't understand is that there's no atheist is an atheist without beliefs and blind faith. May Allah guide us all to the straight path. Imran put a heart onto this. So 15 people like this, and he put a heart on this, saying, yeah, I like this. This is a great comment. When it's such a stupid one. Absolutely astonishing. Simple and basic, I think, but extremely profound questions which do baffle atheists. And you will see the 3 questions just now and see if any atheist is baffled by them.
This is all it is. You've said it, I've said it, we all say it, right? They're appealing to a gullible and mostly ignorant audience that they could be saying gobbledygook, and sometimes they do, and their audience will nod along completely hypnotized.
Yeah. Brother makes a good point. Okay, I like how you make videos to tackle the number one topic that prevents people accepting Islam. Now, I don't know what the number one topic is.
Critical thinking, hopefully?
No, I think he's talking about atheists.
Yeah, I know.
Because once they accept that there's... Okay, I'm sorry, but this is so stupid. Rob, can you keep a straight face while reading this icon?
Because once they accept that there is a God, then accepting Islam makes more sense, and more people will have a peaceful afterlife, mashallah. Well, like I've said before, right, firstly, this guy and virtually every Muslim on the planet doesn't know any other versions of a God, or apart from maybe Christianity. Most of them haven't read the other ones. And like I say, I've read an account of a God that is far more plausible, more moral, doesn't have any of the problems that Islam or anything else has, right? The Conversations with God series of books. And if there were a God, that's the God I would want to exist and want to have a relationship with, not this version of a God. So clearly I'm open to a God just this particular one is probably one of the worst ones that could have been imagined. And the fact that these guys think that makes more sense just tells us how limited their scope is and how little critical thinking is going on.
Yeah, but what do you need to make Islam make more sense?
In our chat, Nikhil Sanka makes a good point. We are not medical doctors like the religious people. Like Dr. Ryan loves to use the term medical doctor. I'm a medical doctor, but somehow
Yeah, but I think also you make a good point, Stops. Accepting Islam makes more sense. What makes more sense specifically? Is it this ancient book that has been cobbled together over hundreds of years? Is it the idea that a man heard voices in a cave? Is it the profoundly ordinary, if not potentially immoral acts of the guy that they claim is a prophet? What is it that actually makes more sense? Because what they can't argue here is the general arguments for God. So, even if we accept it, because I'm going to start doing more of that now, I'm going to accept for sake of argument, that a God is more probable, because I've heard all of the other things. They can't get past step one. Yeah. So I'm going to be super charitable and allow them to get past step one and say, okay, let's assume for a moment there is a God. I'm going to suggest that conversation with God is a far more plausible, moral, and potential God than anything that you could provide us. So now, how do you argue that Islam makes more sense? Because you've got to appeal to Muhammad and the Quran, and in fact, you've got to really ultimately appeal to the Quran, which is supposedly the word of God. Because Muhammad is just a mouthpiece, so he's really just doing what he's told. He's a parrot, really, and so really, it comes down to your book. And how are you going to claim? And we're going to look at it tonight that makes more sense than anything else that's ever been read. And any Muslim in the world, we can deal with that with them. But isn't it surprising how few Muslims actually want to deal with it? Fascinating. Because if that was so incredibly good, they'd be shouting it from the rooftops. They wouldn't be challenging any other religion or anything else. They'd just be showing us how wonderful their book is. And if it was that wonderful, we'd all be just stunned and amazed. And even if we didn't like some of the implications, if we were intellectually honest, we'd have to go, there's nothing better. This is just stunningly incredible. And what do we find instead?
And even the verses that they shout about is very cherry-picked and very even cherry-picked parts of verses. They're not even the full thing itself or the full chapter. It's just very cherry-picked, and they're very vague too. They're not they're incomplete, practically.
Yeah, I will never forget this one sentence where I was totally stunned, where it said, okay, and what we need to accept is when they... And it stops. So how can you have a sentence where half of the sentence is missing, and there is none of the translators, nobody picked this up, nobody knew. They put in brackets their own sort of idea what it could mean, but that's it. So how can you have a book which misses half a sentence and you say, wow, this is an amazing book, where you have to complete it? You have to, it's like one of these children's books with a dotted line, insert what is correct here. And how can this be a book written, authored, designed, developed, and by a God as a guide for people to go to this peaceful afterlife? Yeah, but you need, we've done this so many times. Let's take the last one. Oh my God. Even the devil acknowledges Allah. Subhanallah.
Oh dear Lord.
So one mythical creature acknowledges another one. Batman acknowledges Superman. Congratulations.
That's exactly the best analogy you can make.
Can you believe it? And this is supposed to be so wonderful and convincing that people...
Yeah, but stops. We just got to remember, right? These are brains that have been... It's like they've been injected with MS-DOS or Windows 3.1, right? And that's all it can run. When you try to install something new and modern, it just gets rejected. It just goes to a blue screen and reboots. And so we just got to remember that that's the sort of thinking process is going on for many of these commenters and the Muslims that we've interacted with, right? The brains just haven't, and who knows whether they can, right? I'll be charitable and suggest that it's possible, at least for some of them, if not more. but they're just running on an old operating system that just outright rejects any new information and restarts itself all the time and just repeats itself. Because they just don't, there isn't the capacity, isn't the memory, the hard drive, and the system itself just doesn't take on this new information. It's beyond what that older system can cope with, and so you just get this reboot type effect. And so as long as we have that, in some sense, I suppose we can be empathetic, right? And just recognize that what we need to do is a system in some way to upgrade the operating system. And that's always what I'm thinking about much more now. How is it that I can appeal to people to upgrade the operating system, aka sort of think more critically? And I believe that if you did, you couldn't possibly be a Muslim. That would not be possible. I would find the flaw in any Muslim's view and explain to them where their critical thinking is lacking. And so again, I'm trying to have empathy under certain circumstances. Not always easy though, right? But that's at least an approach I'm sort of mulling over.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. The only problem is you will not get somebody to go and do this with, because they're too shit scared. This is the thing. I tried this the last time when this half Muslim or doubting Muslim was there on Veli's stream, and this is exactly what I wanted to do, but he ran away as soon as he realized that he's going to get pushed in the corner. So, pity.
And yeah, have them. It was a good technique that you also recommended, that ask them the question, put the burden of proof on them. And, I've actually started applying this too, and I have started to notice many backing away from questions that I generally ask. And, this is what you guys are saying. It's correct 90% of the time.
Okay, it's such a pity that they are such cowards and they will not come here and will not allow us to have a chat with them.
I like what James SC is saying, right? He's saying, he said firstly, you're right, Rob. But to be honest, I can't help but want to explain what is wrong and so win the argument. James wants to join us, so let's add it in. We'll welcome him to come along. James, I'll just put it into general chat. So just James joined for now. If somebody else does want to join, then let us know in general. Let us know who you are and what you want to say, and then we could probably bring you in. So I'm posting that main link there for James SC at the moment.
There we go.
And then we could probably bring you in. So I'm posting that. We can hear the YouTube playing in the background. Evening, James.
Good evening.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, how are you guys?
Yeah, good. Just a quick one for the panel, and because they didn't hear last night, I think it was, James was on Valley's stream, and the question was around slavery, and James, just because there was a real simpleton, probably the gold medal of simpletons that I've come across, certainly in Hangouts anyway, that this particular guy, and he wasn't even a Muslim, by the way, claiming that he didn't think that there was slavery, and this hadith is all Chinese whispers, and James just dumped all this info, right? The information, showed him the evidence and stuff. And of course, when you're speaking to a simpleton that doesn't want to accept it, it's like water off a duck's back. But it was fascinating listening to James do that last night. So welcome, James.
Thank you. Yeah. I just want to say something quickly about this. The whole question of approaches, like inviting people to upgrade the operating system, asking questions, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think it depends a lot on sort of who you're talking to and what the environment is. Like if you're one-on-one, kind of naturally, kind of like you can build more rapport and get people to kind of be a bit more open-minded if you sort of adopt these like street epistemology techniques and are more sort of questions. However, in some environments, that's kind of pretty tricky. Like if you're sort of on a debate in kind of Discord or YouTube or that kind of thing. And then in that case, my current thinking is that it's better to kind of present the facts. And even if the other person just kind of like ignores them, there might be some people in the audience who kind of feel like, well, I'm going to look into this more. And, then they'll perhaps see.
Yeah, I agree. So that I think that everybody has a different goal. My goal, and maybe similar to yours, James, and Stops and Mustafa. Not everybody has this goal, by the way, but my goal is to try and persuade people who are open to thinking critically. Preaching to the choir, in my view, only gets you popular with the people that already are on your side of the fence. So I was watching a debate recently with Aaron Ra, and he was with T-Jump against two other Christians, and I sort of watched this, and I was like, you know, he's only preaching to his own people, interrupting incessantly, making massive claims that we already agree with, but from a Christian point of view, not bringing anything substantial to actually demonstrate that, yeah, God is all wrong, blah, blah. We all believe that. But, somebody who's listening, I think, in my mind, and go, would any Christian be convinced by somebody shouting, no, you're all wrong, and God is obviously not true, and you guys are talking nonsense? Well, obviously not. Well, obviously not. But I guess it depends on the goal. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes. Maybe Aaron Ra's goal, for some people at least, I'm just using him as an example, is not to persuade other people. It's to, sing to your choir. In that case, you can interrupt incessantly and just make the claims that we all agree with on our side of the fence. But I think with other people, as you're pointing out, it is appealing. Because like Hamza's den's running now, right, in line with ours, amazingly enough. But people like that are not going to be convinced. But maybe some of the audience might be, and some of the audience here might start to think about things in a way that they haven't done before. And that's my goal, is that sort of thing, not with the general interlocutors, as you point out, James, because it's very unlikely they're going to take anything on board. Occasionally, on rare occasions, they might, as you guys have probably experienced, but it's very unlikely.
Yeah. Can I say a couple of things about Hamza and Aaron Ra? I think that's sort of Aaron Ra like approach of basically kind of being bold, it's not sort of like valid in an argument, but like or like sort of persuasion, except it does kind of have a benefit in that if you're kind of like sort of arguing with a group who's like a different from your group, then if that group kind of seems a bit kind of timid, then you might take them less seriously than if the group is a bit more kind of forceful. So psychologically, that kind of affects if this group kind of seems as though it has enough kind of power in society that they can like assert themselves, then you're kind of more likely to kind of take that seriously than imagine kind of on a Muslim Discord server, for example, if you're with a panel of or in a voice chat with 8 Muslims and you're the only non-Muslim, then they'll feel like they're the majority. They've got their little society. You don't have sort of the power there, and whereas and so they're kind of less likely to kind of pay attention to your claims or take them seriously. Whereas if they know that they're kind of dealing with sort of a group of people who kind of seem, maybe strong or forceful, then psychologically that kind of has a difference, the meekness versus the, a bit of assertion, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And the approach, I also feel that the approach should be a lot more friendlier, and it should more invite a discussion rather than a debate. And the discussion should be asked them questions. Okay, why do you believe in this? What was this bias, or was it because you grew up with this, or because you read something? So you ask these type of questions, and then you start getting more honest responses, and then you start getting them to think.
I think also, Mr. Furs, what James has said, right, it is dependent on your interlocutor. Somebody like a Hamza on Hamza's Den, right, is a simpleton, and he's there to preach and look good to his audience. And there you do need a stronger approach. And we did a video with you, James, and you saw it as well. I think when James first started, probably with me as well, we were much sort of softer in the beginning. We wanted that, and we still do want the intellectual discussion. But I think what we realized over a period of time is that some of these people, you have to use a different approach, because even the intellectual argument gets lost in the wind, because these guys have got dishonest tactics, and they attempt steamrolling and so forth, and they shout and they're abrasive and so forth. And if you watch, with what James did in that particular one that we reviewed, right, he was much stronger in there and put them on the spot. And it's not and I don't always want to do that, but these guys, these particular guys, are that sort of ilk. Now, as you point out, if you speak to somebody who's more honest, that's more nuanced, that wants an honest discussion, then all of us will be much more patient. We don't need to do it in that way. But I think James is right. There are occasions where you have to sort of turn up the heat and so forth in an attempt to kind of at least level the playing field, or even appeal to some of their audience.
With Hamza's Den, kind of I tried to get on there, and I was in the StreamYards in the back chat, and he was talking to someone else, and he was running the kind of typical, if Muhammad wasn't a liar, if he wasn't a madman, then he must have been a prophet, that sort of thing. And so I was pointing out like some basic kind of lies that he was telling in order to make this argument, or sort of tactical omissions of truth. Like, for example, he kind of claimed, Muhammad was, he was known as he said he was known as the, what's the word, the truthful, like Muhammad, the
trustworthy one. Yeah.
yeah. And no one ever calls him a liar. And I kind of pointed out that, in Asbab al-Nuzul, in the circumstances of revelation, there is a report saying that, one of the verses in the Quran, chapter 3, verse 116 or 161, one of those two, is about, Muhammad after a battle. Like, his own followers accused him of having stolen some of the war booty, like his own followers. And so I pointed that out, and like immediately I was like kicked after I said, like, look at Hamza's missing this out. And so then I kind of wrote in the live chat, kind of like, I was kicked just for pointing out that Hamza kind of like ignored this report saying that Muhammad's followers called him a liar, or accused him of being a liar. And then he kind of like stopped the stream for a second. So like, no, listen, we're going to make something very clear. We will never have James SC on this show because he is a Islamophobe and he threatened to burn the Quran. And Sabor was like, yeah, mate, I just want to say something to James SC. We had some debates, but like, you're an Islamophobe, and so we will never debate you.
I remember seeing that, and he'd beaten you down and all this, right? Because he's like the world champion in his own mind. Hey, it's amazing to be delusional. I remember seeing that, right? And then they're not allowing you. And I think the same has been said for stops. I was allowed on once. I'm not sure if I can still go on or not. But the more critical, and you guys know more than me as well. So I think that's part of the reason, right? This Islamophobe thing is a front to avoid strong critique. So it's either a case of dismissing people or calling them Islamophobes, whatever it is. Because if you went on there now and challenged them on Islam, right, they'd be all up a creek. Neither of the two of them, or even the two of them together, could defend it. And so, but we just don't hear it. I was saying that the other day, James. We don't have people coming on here. We don't have all these Muslims going out there showing us how wonderful the Quran and Muhammad and the Hadiths are. What we're now seeing is them avoiding this. And those people that do, they quickly, refuted with the scientific claims and all the rest of it, right? So I think they're learning a lesson that to try and invoke the Quran is just like, an impossible, thing to climb. And we'll go through some verses now just to show how there's no way a God could have done this, right? That's my thing. You look at the Quran and it's evidence against the claim that Islam must be true.
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing on this point is that, I think what might be fun is if in another time that they're on, kind of in the Discord, if we have any sort of volunteers or regulars of the Discord server who aren't in their blacklist yet, and they kind of phone in, but like they have our Discord open and we're kind of listening in as well, so that we can like post links that might be helpful to them, and like they can like sort of have our sort of live chat in the background. That might be pretty fun, like sending on like Logicat or Dave or someone that they kind of don't know yet, and you can get the same effect basically. Because they clearly they only want to engage with arguments kind of within outside of the tradition, I should say. So they don't want.
Yeah, I did that with Pio.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
And I did it at Speaker's Corner as well, James. When I still went there, I had my earplug in, and Stops was live on Skype with me. We walked around, and he'd say some things in my ear while I was live, because you can't watch it on the recording; it's too delayed. And we did that a couple of times. We didn't have super success. There was one or two guys there, but nobody of importance, right? And I went up to a few guys because I wanted to basically relay what Stops was saying, and they just walked away. I mean, maybe they had a premonition or something. I don't know. But maybe, you're right. We could do something like that. The other thing we could do, and Stops is trying to do, is call these guys out and do a 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 or something like that on modern day debates, because that's kind of a neutral channel. It's got lots and lots of viewers now. They do all kinds of things, right? And now they don't have the home field advantage, which they use a lot. I saw it the other night. They kick people out. And they certainly won't come on here. They're sort of, all kinds of excuses why not to come on here. But then maybe it's a case of finding a neutral venue to discuss the claims. Anyway, we could talk about that all night. Let's maybe look at some of these verses and see what we think about some of these things, and remind ourselves how can one possibly believe this comes from a God?
Yeah. Right. And Beach is back. Welcome back. I saw you commenting on another channel, and I thought, yeah, I see you. But welcome back. All right, we're in the Koran Zone. And we're looking at the last 4 sentences in chapter 8, which was the booty. Booty. I don't know why you need booty and why Allah needs a fifth of the booty for himself. But
Which is his already, right? It's like me owning the property and saying, give me some of the property. Give me some of my own property back.
But you first need to kill some people before you do that.
Which are also my property, right? So kill some of my property and then give me some of what I own back to me.
It's so silly. Anyway, and we went to, you know, the really, and in my eyes, horrid sentences, you know, that you're not allowed to take captives unless you've really caused a massacre amongst your enemy, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see on top there, 69, enjoy your booty, you know, like tell them if they behave, they will be rewarded. And if not, they will be punished. This is the God of mercy, the God of peace, the God of Islam. And then in 72, and this is still in chapter 8, help only those who emigrated with you. In other words, those who went with you from Mecca to Medina. If they want you to fight, and it says they help in religion. Okay, this is the funny thing. If you go to the Quran, they actually say help in religion, but it's equal to fight. Then only those you don't have a peace treaty with. In other words, if somebody comes to you and says, well, please help me out here, give me some help in religion, in other words, send some soldiers because I want to kill some people so I can get more booty, then you can only do this under certain circumstances. So you're not allowed to, and this is actually a good thing, that you're not allowed to attack people randomly, but they first need to go and you need to check that you don't have a peace treaty with the other ones, because you can't do your enemy is my enemy. If I have a peace treaty, it doesn't work. But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great. And Rob just pulled up the original. This is what it actually says in the Quran. Remember, what I'm doing is I'm taking all these long bits and pieces, and I sort of condense them, and I only give you the essence of what is left. And I welcome this, that people check me, and how you put the Father Christmas hat. And I welcome this to see that what I am saying is not something that I've just sort of pulled out of my nose or something, but this is actually something that it says in the Quran, and I've just sort of condensed it. So if you find that I'm not, I don't know what you want to call it, representing what it says there correctly, then please, by all means, update me. I don't have a problem with that at all. This is the way that I learned. But this is what I see in these sentences. This is the one thing that I see. Help only those who emigrated with you. If they want you to fight, then only those you don't have a peace treaty with. This is what I see here. The next one in 73 would be non-believers are allies of one another. Really? Okay. Well, if you don't, there will be oppression, corruption. And it says help. I don't understand this. This sentence is one of those sentences I don't understand what they're trying to tell me. You tell me what it says.
Yeah, so it says here, it's Sahih International, and those who disbelieved are allies of one another. If you do not do so, there will be fitna on earth and great corruption. So
what are they talking about?
Yeah, it's basically saying that they're all allies of each other. They're all the same. It's like a very us versus them, and
yes.
It's like if you don't. What is the if you do not do so? What is it saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. What do I have to do to prevent the destruction of the earth?
Well, it's like many verses in the Quran, because they were sort of delivered as sort of speeches or sermons to an live audience. Kind of, they'd be revealed kind of in a very particular context, like in the middle of a conversation often. And so it would be obvious what Muhammad was talking about at the time. And then he'd say, and this was from God, by the way, this is the speech of Allah. And so they'd write it down as the speech of Allah, but it's totally unintelligible unless you are actually there as part of the audience. Otherwise, you need some sort of a historical human report to tell you, what that thing he is doing that he's talking about as not doing so actually is. So yeah, it's unintelligible for people coming later.
The problem is that we've pointed this out several times. If you go and then you look at the context, or you try and find the context, you go to the tafsir, you go to the scholars, you go and look at them, they contradict one another. And this is the problem, that if you have a sentence and if you don't, which nobody understands what this is, and then you go and look at this, it still is not clear.
Have you ever heard Muslims try saying that, other religions, perhaps they might have the inspired word of God, but we have the direct word of God without any human interference. Yeah. And so even if you make that claim on face value, sorry?
Yeah, it's a very common claim, actually. Or they were inspired by God, but they were corrupted by the people. So how do you know they were corrupted? And how do you know your message is correct?
Yeah, but I mean, even if you take that on that claim and you say, okay, cool, and then you show them one of these verses, you ask them, what does it mean? And they say, oh, well, I don't know what it means. I'll need to look at the historical context. Then he's saying that the meaning of God's word is totally lost unless he relies on human recorded history. So it's not like, the direct word of God is actually helping him here. He's on the same sort of uncertain footing as other religious scriptures, which are kind of only human inspired and God inspired the human with some human addition. So I've tried explaining this to some people, how can you, if you feel like this is inadequate for scripture to be kind of inspired by God, and yet, you can't understand your scripture unless you're relying on human history, which could be fallible or could be kind of mistaken, and there are differences of opinion on the history, then, how can you feel like your religion, which is meant to be perfect, is actually kind of adequate?
But the other thing you could do to test this, right, is give this to Muslims, this verse, and say, what does this mean? As you quite rightly pointed out, James, and 99 times out of 100, they will have to say, well, I need the context. I'll have to appeal to a scholar. In other words, I'll have to speak to or find out some other information from humans in order to understand what this means. And then you just point out that, like Surah 3:138 and others claim that this book is a clear message or a clear guidance for people. And if you can't read a verse on its own and understand what the guidance is, that you need, quote, context or other verses, what does it say about the author? Could the author not have done better to make each verse explicable in and of itself so that anybody who picked up this book could immediately understand a clear and concise message in every single verse?
Yeah. But the other funny thing, on this point, is that you can clearly see such a big difference in clarity between the Quran versus Jewish scriptures like the Bible and the Old Testament, because all the Jewish scriptures were written down or created because they knew that they were going to narrate something for a later audience, and so they're actually pretty clear to read through. You aren't going to kind of just start reading a verse and say, and it will say in the Bible, and if you do that thing, then beware, just like the Quran does all the fucking time, or and those people, we did the thing to them and we punished them. The Quran says this all the time. And it's because Muhammad just created these sort of verses on the fly as sermons in particular settings where it's kind of obvious who he's referring to, because the people are there at the time and they kind of know what people were talking about just before the kind of sermon started. Whereas the other scriptures, they're actually written by sensible people who kind of realize, hey, no one's going to realize what we're talking about if we write this book for people to follow the guidance of their lives by, and we don't make it clear what we're talking about because it's third person narration the whole way through. So I think that's a really striking difference between a sort of scripture that's kind of made up by one person, Muhammad, kind of on the fly, versus kind of faith traditions that are made up by a group of people with some sort of planning and vision and clarity.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the tafsir, right? Because Stops was asking, what does this mean? So, and those that disbelieve are allies of one another in terms of support and inheritance. Doesn't say that there, so they're inferring that. So there is no inheriting between you and them, i.e. between the believers and disbelievers. Unless you do this, i.e. unless you stop, having relations with them, you you ally yourself with the believers and sever relations with the disbelievers, there it is, there'll be sedition in the land. So that's kind of the idea of that particular verse. Well, that's at least what the Tafsir is claiming that this means.
But then it's
One of them,
the
yeah.
chapter is about spoils of war. So what does inheritance have to do with spoils of war? And because this verse is extremely vague. It's very vague.
And the thing is, I'm quite happy that I am going through this, and I question every single sentence. I question every single word, basically, because if you read the Quran, you will very quickly read over this, and you'll automatically correct it, and you will think, oh yeah, I understand what it says. Actually, you don't. And this is why I'm very happy to do this, that I still pick up these little sort of intricacies which they don't make sense if you don't see them in some sort of context which is not provided to you. And this is why I'm quite happy that I can still pick these up. And sometimes I say, what? Okay, 74. Those who immigrated with you, who fought hard as well as their helpers, are the worthy ones. And those who joined later, well, they're also okay. Now, what is the point of this? So why do you go and you say the ones who joined you in the beginning are they get some sort of preferential treatment, and then you say, well, those later, they're also your brothers in belief or whatever.
So it says here, both those who have believed and immigrated and fought in the cause of Allah, and those who gave shelter and aided, it is they who are the believers, truly for them forgiveness and noble provision. Okay, so and then the following verse says that those who, like was it 75 that said? Yeah, there we go. And those who believed after the initial immigration and immigrated and fought, they are of you, but those of relationship are more entitled in the decree of Allah. Indeed, Allah is knowing of all things. Yeah, it's basically like, it's basically sums up what you said. Oh, they're also okay, but there's more preference for, relationships, and who is more entitled.
The early adopters.
Yeah, the early ones.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, that is end of chapter 8. That is the end of the chapter on the war booty. Oh boy, this was quite an active chapter, let me tell you. And note, there's only 75 sentences in this one.
Yeah.
So let's go to chapter 9. Sorry?
This one was fairly short for one, because earlier chapters at least have like 200, 100.
Exactly, yeah. I was very surprised because I expected another 100 chapters, 100 sentences. Yeah.
Just gets shorter from here, doesn't it, guys?
No. Remember, I made this diagram where I showed in a line the length of the chapters, and this is not the case. It goes up and down. It's only when you do like the overall trend or very general or something that you see. It's going.
Okay, all right.
Down the length, but the individual ones, no, definitely no. It's totally chaotic. So chapter 9, the repentance. The only chapter without the introductory Bismillah, in the name of Allah. This does not have it. Here, they jump right in. And you will find in this chapter, 9:5, the sword verse, kill non-believers wherever you find them. 9:28, stop non-believers from nearing the Kaaba because you are filthy and you will defile the Kaaba if you get near it. And you get the famous 9:29, commandment to fight the people of the book until they surrender. And then, of course, forbidding the Prophet to...
Even Maverick knows how bad this verse is.
Oh, yeah.
Forbidding the Prophet to pray for the forgiveness of hypocrites or at their graves. And 113, pray for those who died as non-believers. So, not allowed to pray for them. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting chapter, I think. So it starts off with Allah and His Messenger are under no obligation to keep the treaties made with the polytheists. Interesting, eh?
Yeah, interesting. This is used as an excuse to discriminate against non-believers. That they broke our treaty, but this is a huge double standard right here. So it says here, this and a declaration of immunity from Allah and His messenger to those of the pagans with whom ye have contracted mutual alliances.
Yeah, he's kind of saying we had a treaty before, but I'm cancelling our side of all the treaties. Like, I'm reneging on those treaties.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, and like I always do, I always read through the tafsir, and this is Ibn Abbas, and you can read this as well. Ibn Abbas said, the freedom from obligation is the freedom from obligation. This is freedom from obligation from Allah and His Messenger towards those of the idolaters with whom you made a treaty. Now, how exactly is that a tafsir? How exactly does this explain what it says in this sentence? So funny.
Well, so tafsir Ibn Abbas is pretty well known as like a fraudulent tafsir. That
yeah, it is.
Yeah, as in it's not actually from Ibn Abbas. It's like from some guy 600 years later, and he kind of claims that I found a bunch of narrations from Ibn Abbas that kind of are that, and I can make a tafsir out of all these narrations. But then, like, most of them are considered fraudulent by kind of other Muslim scholars and that sort of thing.
But it's still part of the tafsirs. It's part of the literature. It's part of the whatever. And it's quite funny when you read these things and you're looking for an explanation. You're looking for, okay, what are you trying to? Why are you doing this? What is the rationale behind this? And then you see an explanation like this. And then it says in sentence number 2, you can travel for 4 months, but you can't escape Allah. And then in 3, you can't escape Allah, and non-believers will be severely punished. Wow, wonderful. That's the God.
I think part of the implication of verse 2 is saying, like, now that I've cancelled our treaty, I'll still let you all travel free, kind of, and that implies kind of with safety. Like, you can all travel safety. Like, we aren't gonna attack for 4 months. And the historical tafsirs say that was because, like, during this time, it was during the so-called sacred months.
Yeah, like Muharram, Safar, I think Zul Hajj was one of those months as well.
Yeah.
And which is the 4th month? I always forget which one was the 4th one. Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't specify which months either. Like, it just says months. There are 4 months in the Quran itself. That's one from Allah. On the day of the great pilgrimage, that Allah and His Messenger dissolve treaty obligation with the pagans, and then ye repent, if it were best for you. But if ye turn away, know ye that ye cannot frustrate Allah and proclaim a grievous penalty to those who reject faith.
That's sheer hate.
There's always a grievous penalty. Remember, you said it as well, Stops, how many sentences there are in the Quran that remind the disbelievers. 105, right? How the unpleasantness of them not doing what they're told, basically.
And actually, this one is not on there, because this one just gives you a grievous penalty. I only counted the ones which actually threatened you with hellfire.
Yeah.
So this is not very nice, is it? Where's the mercy? Where is the mercy? I ask you, why did God, the creator, the all-knowing creator, create people knowing in advance that they will not believe what He wants them to believe, and then He punishes them for His own incompetence? The same question I ask every single time.
Well, He's the most just and the most merciful simultaneously. We'll ignore that contradiction and just pretend that it doesn't exist.
So they will be severely punished, except the ones you made a mutual treaty with. Keep it until it expires, or until you don't feel like it anymore. Whatever the case, whatever comes first. Terms and conditions apply. When the sacred months are over, find, besiege, capture, and kill them. Now I've rearranged this because in the long version it's totally different. And then if they convert, leave them be.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it nice?
Yeah. And when the sacred months have passed, or it says here when the forbidden, when the forbidden months are passed, and then fight and slay the pagans wherever you find them, and seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war. But if they repent and establish regular prayers and practice regular charity, and then open the way for them, for Allah is often forgiving and most merciful.
Yeah, most merciful.
Okay, with these, like with these, this particular chapter, and especially like the beginning, kind of up to like say verse 13 or so, or maybe 15, kind of each one kind of builds off the last, and so it can sort of be a little confusing if you kind of focus in on one verse at a time. And so one of the sort of most I think the sort of explanation that makes the most sense and like ties up the different sort of historical events is from Ibn Qayyim, called Zad al-Mad, so I know I might if possible kind of like post the link, and then Rob can like post it in the live chat for people to kind of check out themselves.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Well, absolutely.
I don't have it ready right now, but I'll post it in the link in the private chat.
Yeah, pop it in the private chat there. The irony, we have somebody with irony in the chat. Don't you just love irony? The irony of a Muslim talking about critical thinking, claiming the stream doesn't have it, right? It's like looking in the mirror and forgetting that he's talking to himself, isn't it? It's fascinating, the cognitive dissonance, isn't it? But that's what you have to do when you've got to defend this book, right? You've got to look in the mirror and think you're talking to somebody else, but in fact you're talking to yourself. It's a fascinating sort of dive, maybe a bit of a horror story into the human mind that has to defend this sort of stuff, and then almost help itself in the sense of deluding itself into thinking that it applies to the other people. Never at one point, I bet you this catch-22 either hasn't read the Quran, or if he has, doesn't understand it, right? Because if you had to ask him questions or ask him to explain this or defend this book, he'd be all up a creek just like every other Muslim. But in their delusion, they want to claim that it's everybody else. And we can improve on every single verse in this Quran trivially easily. That must show how poor this author is.
What is Maverick saying to this? The word cannot possibly be prayer in that context. Just think, for fuck's sakes. Which one is this?
No, they're talking amongst themselves.
Okay, yeah.
What's the next one there, Stops?
I'm
7.
fascinated by this. Okay, it doesn't matter. All right, it's a pity because I like this topic. If they beg or if they ask for protection, preach to them and then let them go. I don't understand that. First it says you need to kill them. Now it says you can preach to them and this has no consequences. So I think this is really, really funny how it changes within a couple of sentences to contradict each other.
Yeah,
this
so
is quite weird.
Are they claiming though that if they ask for asylum, right? Yeah. Well, that's sort of the claim.
If one amongst the pagans asks thee for asylum, granted to him, so that he may hear the word of Allah and then escort him to where he can be secure. That is because they were men without knowledge.
So why does it say a few sentences before that? No, kill them.
Oh, because if they ask for forgiveness or whatever the case is, or ask what
asylum,
is it?
Yeah. For protection.
Yeah, if they ask, but if they repent, right? So presumably this is one of the people that are repenting and asking for asylum, then granted, if they behave themselves.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that in the other one. Kill them only if they don't ask for asylum. There it just says kill them, and here it says if somebody asks for protection. So this is a new option that I didn't see in the other one before that. So, yeah. Oh, James is back. Ah, Jesus. We're always clicking at the same time. Okay. The only valid treaty is one agreed upon near the forbidden mosque.
Or Masjidul Haram.
How does that work? You're not allowed to go near the forbidden mosque, but the only valid treaty is one agreed upon near it. So you can't do that. You can never have a valid treaty with anyone who is not a Muslim, because non-Muslims are not allowed near the forbidden mosque. Number 8. How can there be a treaty if they don't respect it when they can defeat you? Now, there are multiple interpretation possibilities here. Because one of them says, well, if they can defeat you, then they will not respect the treaty. So there can't be a real treaty if it is dependent on the weakness or strength of the one that you are making a treaty with. The other way that it can be interpreted is that you cannot trust anybody who will go back on their word as soon as they gather the strength to defeat you. So there are multiple versions that I have read that can be applied here. But I don't know which one, whether there is any consensus here, what this actually is. I have no idea. So, all right, number 9. And this is something that we've come across before. They changed my revelations for a paltry price, which is the human versus divine laws, and blocked others too. Does anybody
They exchanged the signs of
this?
Allah for a small price and averted from His way. Indeed, it was evil that they were doing. They sold for a miserable price and hindered from His way. So they obviously got in the way of people, presumably.
So the way that it is interpreted is that the revelation by the pagans was changed. I don't know what the paltry price is. So that this stops others from believing in Islam, because they said actually what he is saying is different from what it actually says in the Quran, or what the real revelation is. I don't know I don't understand the paltry price. Really, I don't understand it.
Yeah,
It could be a euphemism for exactly this human versus divine law, because I see this all the time in the commentaries. So it could be that this is a sort of a idiom. I don't know.
Yeah.
Even the explanation is a bit odd, and it's not very specific. What are they purchasing exactly?
Yeah, that's why. Because I see this in the explanations again and again. I suspect that this could be synonymous, or it could be a placeholder or something. I don't know. Like what the right hands possess. I mean, that this is a euphemism for slave. Okay, well, maybe paltry price is exactly this changing of the laws between human and divine laws. I don't know.
It's all simple, guys. We're just not reading it correctly. We have an interpreter here who clearly understands this so well, because this message is so crystal clear according to this particular guy. Right? It's just so simple. We just got closed hearts. We just can't understand it. But this open-hearted, clear thinking person here will just explain it all for us.
When we get to when we get to around like 14 or 15 or that sort of thing, would it be okay if I read out the kind of like explanation of the sort of chapter up to this point, because it can in isolation it can seem kind of unclear, like, oh, what's the category of people that you can have treaties with, like how long does that last, or that sort of thing. And so I found this thing that I posted kind of pretty helpful. But
yeah, we can share screen on it. We won't get there. I think we're going to go as far as 11. But what we can do, though, James, is then I can screen share, and you can read that, and we'll keep a copy of that for next week. And if you want to come back, then obviously we can do it. Otherwise, we can pull it up again. But yeah, I think we can at the end of 11 then stop. So let's bring that up. So is that the one that you posted for us? The explanation.
It's a section from a book. Yeah.
Okay.
Because what I do is always take blocks which sort of belong to each other. Where it makes sense to read them and not stop halfway through. So I made a break at sentence 11, because then it sort of changes tack, and this is why I stopped there, because then the next block is a different topic. That's why I did this. So then it says, these horrible people have no respect for believers. Oh, these horrible people. But if they convert, they're your brothers. I don't know. This is so funny. Like, people tell me, why did you become a Muslim? Come on, I would be the worst Muslim ever. And they're still saying, yeah, but you need to be a Muslim. Why would I be a Muslim? It's quite funny how their brains work, really. James as well. I'm sure you've been told millions of times, why don't you join Islam? Why don't you join us?
Yeah, I have been. Okay, so yeah, this is a clip of what I or it's part of a book, and it starts off with him giving basically a brief summary of Muhammad's life and his relations towards jihad, and how the clear sort of the progression over time from earlier in the life to sort of chapter 9, which is towards the end of his prophethood. So yeah, it starts off saying in his book Zad al-Mad, that the first thing which Allah revealed of his books were the words, read the name of your Lord. That's like supposedly the first revelation. This was the beginning of Muhammad's prophethood, for he was commanded simply to recite the words, and he hadn't been told to give the words to anyone else, to like start preaching. Then the verses were revealed, like basically saying that you should start warning people and arising, so begin your preaching. It goes on to say, and he was told to warn his nearest and dearest, then his clan, then those of the Arabs who were near him, then to all of the Arabs, then to warn humanity and the jinn. And he did this for more than 10 years. This is like the standard narrative about his prophethood in Mecca. After the prophethood was placed on him, there was neither fighting nor tribute, like at this point, and he was ordered restraint, patience, and non-violence. Then after this Meccan period, he was permitted to leave Mecca, leave the city, and to fight. Later, he was ordered to fight, and those who attacked him, this is generally regarded as being like the beginning of like chapter 2. It says you can sort of fight in self-defense. Like during chapter 2 is kind of considered to be the beginning of the Medinan surahs, like so the beginning of his career in Medina before he was in Mecca. Later, and remember the chapters of the Quran aren't sort of arranged in chronological order. They're kind of arranged just in a random order. Later he was ordered to fight those who attacked him, but not those who left him alone without attacking him. I mean, this is kind of perhaps questionable. Like maybe he did start some of those fights against the caravans, but they're at least claiming that it was in self-defense. That's the point. They're claiming that this is in self-defense. Finally, he was ordered to struggle against the pagan Arabs until all religion was solely for the sake of Allah alone. And this is a throwback to chapter 8 verses, I think it was 38 or 39, wasn't it? Like, fight them until the religion is for Allah alone. Then the disbelievers would be divided into 3 categories: those who agreed to a truce, those who remained in a state of war, and those who lived under the protection of Islam. And so this is kind of what chapter 9 kind of gets into the nitty-gritty of. It says, as for those who enjoyed a truce, he was commanded to abide by the terms of their agreement, although if they were suspected of treachery, their agreement could be revoked. Arms could only be raised against them if their treaty was actually broken. Whoever broke the terms of an agreement would be attacked. And this is kind of like repeating. So this is Surah Barah, who's the name of like chapter 9, also known as Surah At-Tawbah, the can't remember what At-Tawbah means, repentance perhaps, or something like that.
Immunity, I think, isn't it? Immunity.
Immunity, okay, sorry. But was revealed, and it's established an irrefutable basis for this divisions. The Prophet was ordered to struggle against the people of the book, either until they paid tribute or entered into Islam, to fight the pagans and the hypocrites and be harsh against them. So the Prophet fought the pagans forcefully and the hypocrites by argument and persuasion. The hypocrites, remember, are people sort of within the community who kind of claim to be Muslims, but Muhammad suspects that they aren't Muslims. And so he kind of says in some of the verses kind of like, I know that some of you are hypocrites among us. And he's just like berating them for not sort of waging enough jihad, basically. He was then commanded to revoke all agreements with the pagan Arabs. And this is the beginning of the verse where it says, I declare disassociation. I'm revoking all our agreements. That was the beginning verse we read. This split the contracted people, so the people who he had a contract with previously, into 3 groups. A group whom he was now obliged to fight. These were people who, as a result of the rescission of their agreements, broke their former terms, rose up against the Muslims and declared war on them. Another group held temporary agreements, which they did not break, and these were not rescinded. So this means like it kind of like in the verse that's in the beginning of chapter 9, which says like, fulfill their terms or the term of their agreement. This is kind of saying that, if you have like a treaty with a group of people for a fixed finite period of time, then kind of like and they don't attack the Muslims, they don't violate that treaty, then allow that treaty to kind of run out its time, basically. Allow it to elapse. And there was a third group who either held no treaties but did not fight, or who held a permanent agreement. So this is the important distinction, because it kind of said in that verse of the Quran earlier in chapter 9, kind of the people who can check this can bring up the first sort of 10 verses of chapter 9. One of them says abide the treaties until for their terms, because that's only specifying the people who have a fixed contract or a finite time treaty. But people who have a treaty that's just indefinite, then these people kind of for these people, it says the Prophet was ordered to wait for a period of 4 months. Okay, so that's what that was referring to. So these people, any of the people that Muhammad had a peaceful arrangement with, who weren't attacking him, but who had a permanent agreement, just saying saying without any time period specified, we will not attack the Muslims and the Muslims won't attack us, something like that. This is saying that treaty will only work for the next 4 months, and then after that there would be a state of war. Okay, so that's the meaning of these treaties, because sometimes kind of people trying to defend Islam will sort of focus on the verses in a way that it's implying that kind of, oh look, kind of if you obey your treaty, then we aren't going to attack you. But really, that's only for people who have a finite term treaty. So yeah, so
just so I'm clear, James, they were as far I'm reading here. When they say permanent, the permanent, was that permanent and infinite or permanent and finite?
So it means infinite. It means like I said, if I just said to Muhammad, we of the X tribe won't attack Muhammad, and we expect the Muslims not to attack us. That's and the Muslims agreed to that. Muhammad agreed to that. Then that doesn't have a fixed term. So that would be a permanent agreement. That would be an agreement that wouldn't just run out ordinarily. But Muhammad is now sort of disassociating from that agreement and only giving people 4 months to.
That's what I was trying to. Yeah, that's what I wanted to just confirm. So these 4 months did in fact apply to these people who had a permanent agreement as well. So that was it. That was rescinded as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So after 4 months, the only people who the Muslims had an agreement with who would still be safe would be the people that the Muslims had an agreement with, that obeyed the terms of that agreement and didn't attack the Muslims, and the terms of that agreement were finite in time. So if there was an agreement with a particular tribe that said we will not attack the Muslims for 2 years, that would still be in effect. But if it was just if it was an endless agreement, then that would that's being disassociated with, and you're going to be in a state of war after 4 months. So then it goes on to say, these 4 months were calculated from the day of the revelation, which was the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, that is the day of the pilgrimage. It would then expire on the 10th of Rabi. This is not the same as the 4 months mentioned in the later same surah. That's 1 page, and scroll down. These 322 things are kind of footnotes, basically, from the book. Verily, the number of months with Allah is 12 months in a year. So it was ordained by the Allah that he created the heavens and earth, and 4 of them are sacred. This is just kind of fluff. It doesn't really mean anything. One of these stands alone, Rajab, and the 3 are consecutive, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and Muharram. These would be no campaign. There would be no campaign, against the pagan Arabs during any of these 4 months. Since these are not consecutive, it is impossible for them to be the same as the 4 mentioned above. So it is clear that 4 consecutive months would be given before the state of war could be declared. During this interim period, those who broke their agreements were taken to task, and those who had no agreements were given 4 months, as was also the case with those who held indefinite agreements. Temporary agreements would be allowed to expire at their stated times. Everyone who held temporary agreements accepted Islam before these expired, and tribute was then levied on the Jews and the Christians. Obviously, this is a kind of bold claim, saying, oh yeah, everyone who kind of we had a treaty with, and we told them, oh, you're going to have war in 4 months' time. They just converted to they at that point when we threatened them with war, they saw the truth of Islam. You see how it works?
Convenient timing.
Yeah. The status of the disbelievers was settled. there was those with whom the Muslims were at war, those who held tribute, those who held treaties, and those who were paid tribute. Remember, those who held treaties, like, it's the treaties mentioned in chapter 9 are for a term, so they're non-permanent. They have to be sort of temporary treaties, and this is reflected in the later Islamic law. If you kind of go open a book of jihad, like an old book of fiqh, and then go to the chapter on jihad, it'll say clearly that treaties should be temporary. As agreements and treaties began to expire, the situation began to change. After this, the disbelievers fell into only two groups. So the interim period he's talking about is, just after Muhammad made this declaration at the beginning of chapter 9, he gave them 4 months of peace and saying, like, in 4 months' time we're going to start killing you. You'll be at war with us. Wherever we find you, if you haven't surrendered to us, then we'll kill you. Chapter 9, verse 5. So he's saying, like, just after he gave that kind of declaration at the beginning of chapter 9, there were like 3 different types of people. There were those who had fixed term treaties, like non-permanent treaties that hadn't yet run their course, and because that kind of treaty, like, the Muslims were expected to abide by because it was like temporary. But then it's saying, like, after this kind of those sorts of treaties began to expire, and so like those people who they still had a valid treaty with were what were the people who the Muslims had a valid treaty with. All those kind of temporary treaties, finite term treaties, expired, and so you're only left with the people who the Muslims are at war with, and those who are paying the Muslims jizya or tribute. So it says the treaties began to expire, the situation began to change. After this, the disbelievers fell into only 2 groups: those who were in a state of war and those who paid tribute. And this is kind of relating back to chapter 9, verse 29. Kind of, you have to pay, you either pay the jizya or, we're going to fight you. Those who were at war with the Muslims also lived in fear of them. So all those within the realm of the Muslims fell again into 3 groups: those who believed and submitted, those who surrendered and were protected, and those who lived in fear and made war. So, it's saying that, like, kind of, within this kind of what Muhammad is claiming as his arena, his kind of like his because he starts claiming the entire of the Arabian Peninsula. He's saying that, like, you can be a believer and submit to my rule, to Islam's rule, or you can, like, surrender and not be a believer, but you're still paying jizya, or we're going to make war with anyone else. Okay. Mm-hmm. You can't just be like a tribe who has always had their own autonomy and always had their own customs, and you can't just continue living as a tribe, like worshipping your traditional idols. No, you're gonna have war made on you if that happens, and we're gonna you can either submit to Islam or pay the tribute or be fought. Can one keep persecuting if they paid money? Well, like, the people paying the money would be the non-Muslims, like the Jews and the Christians, and arguably the Arab polytheists. In a sense, they would be doing, shirk. They'd be continuing their misguidance and their lack of tawheed. So that could be considered like a bad thing. But yeah, they were basically allowed to continue practicing their religion if they paid money, even though, like, Islam also says that, shirk is the worst thing ever. Oh, it was a joke. Okay, never mind. So yeah, let's continue. The Quran has specified the aims of jihad more than once. At one point it says, and fight them until there is no more fitna, and the religion will be all for Allah. That's chapter 8, verse either 38 or 39. And then he's going to quote a hadith here. Abdurrahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam said, and religion will all be for Allah alone, means that disbelief should not coexist with your religion.
That's as far as it goes there, James.
As far as it goes. But yeah, this kind of like, if you sort of read through this and then compare it to the first, like, 10 or 15 verses of chapter 9, it matches up, and I think it's the most sort of sensible explanation, particularly when you take a holistic view of what we know historically about Islam, the rest of the hadith about Muhammad's kind of carrying out a general conquest of the whole of Arabia, because some people try and, like, maintain the myth that Islam only commands defensive warfare or defensive jihad, and so they'll try and spin chapter 9 in a particular way. But I think this explanation is what makes the most sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
James, this is not historic. This is just the claim from the Islamic text. This is from the fairy tales called the Hadith and things like that. If you go look at reality, it's very different. Have you come across the name John? I think it's John Holland. Holland. No, not Holland.
Tom Holland?
Holland.
No.
Oh.
John Poland. John. Oh, shit, I can't remember his name. John. He's late 17th, early 18th century historian, and he came up with that he owned a book which is called The Three Impostors, and the three impostors stipulated that Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad were all the same kind of a figure, and it's quite easy to see that they're all very similar. Like the heavy activity during the birth, and 10, 20 years nothing, and then the sort of the ministry starts. This has been taken up, and this is something that I find quite fascinating, because if you look at the later developments, if you look at the Quran, which was obviously authored like 100 years later, and if you look at all the stuff that happened, everything is like 100 years later, then you look at the situation of the Umayyads and the Abbasids, and you look at how they expanded and how they introduced a rather new concept, which is not to kill and move on, but to conquer, integrate, and then move on. That is exactly the treaty situation. Your selection, your collection here is brilliant, because it so accurately reflects what happened at the time, where the Umayyads went and they took the armies and said, let's make a treaty. We're not going to destroy you. Yes, we've conquered you. Yes, you're going to pay us a tax, but let's make a treaty, and then you help us. And this is where you get these three categories of people, how the people either go against you, with you, or they stay neutral. And this is, if you apply this kind of a context to the text of the Quran, then it makes more sense than if you take the Hadith and try and bend and squeeze everything so that it fits in with the standard narration, in my eyes anyway. So this is a brilliant collection that you've got there.
Yeah, I feel that I'm to some degree agnostic about how much of how much of the real Muhammad kind of is true, that kind of thing. However, if I think to the best ability that we can try and engage with, what has been reported, sort of either take this. I think this is kind of the most supported interpretation, and it's definitely the interpretation that kind of Muslim jurists kind of throughout their history kind of have gone with. You're too quiet.
Something's happened to your mic, Mustafa.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Better.
There you go.
Now you're coming back.
Is it called Treatise of the Three Impostors?
There's a link in the chat there from TDS Dave at Wikipedia. Treatise, yeah, IES. Just look in the side chat there, or in the chat, Mustafa. You'll see a link there to the Wikipedia. Just outlining it there.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, interesting. That was awesome. Thanks, James, for that. We've got about half an hour, or give or take, or maybe it'll take longer. But it's a little good to get James's thoughts as well. It's a short video that we're going to review, and this is from and Stops is going to bring it up now. This is from one of our era's people, fascinatingly enough, one of Sabur and Hamza Tsortz's cohorts, and probably the weakest of the three Mouseketeers, Imran Hassan. And he's got something to say about atheism. So I think it's atheism as it stops, and I'm sure we can comment on his short 3-minute video.
Yeah, okay, let's go to the theme of the month, which is the Dawah section this month. We're going to continue with it. By the way, I had this idea for next month, because we have 5 Fridays. I don't know if we're going to do the 1st of January, because it's a Friday. But then we have 5 Fridays. Why don't we make it the 5 pillars? That we spend each episode for the month of January on the 5 pillars, going a little bit more in depth going into the pagan origins, going into why they were, what they do, what they actually mean, what you can make of them, what the different interpretations are, and just to get a little bit more of a background on these 5 pillars of Islam. This is an idea. If people agree with this, fine, let us know. At the moment, it's just a suggestion. We're a little bit undecided. Yes, it's a good idea, but do we go through with it? I don't know. If anybody feels that they have an opinion on this, please let us know.
And also stops, I guess we have to chat about whether we're going to go ahead. I might not be available on the 1st. So, I mean, if you are and others are, great. So maybe that's another conversation to be had as well.
What's wrong with you and your family? You have to go on a family on the 1st. I'm sorry, I'm kidding. Yeah. This is exactly why I'm asking. Should we, I don't know, if we should skip the 1st of January, because a lot of people are exactly in this situation like you are, especially since it's a long weekend. A lot of people are taking off and taking the 3 days holiday. So
we might not do, I think this might be the last one of the year then as well, because if we're looking at the calendar, obviously next one is Christmas Day, and I don't think anybody will be around for that. And then the following one is New Year. So it might be the last show of the year. Yeah.
True
well,
story.
It probably is, might be. I don't think we'll be around next week anyway.
Well, 25th for me is not not anything, because especially since COVID, there's nothing that you can do. So everything is on Skype or online or WhatsApp, these kind of things, but nothing really in real time.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay.
There might well be another show. Might be stops though, but or anybody else that doesn't have Christmas going on.
The hardcore. Okay, guys, then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this guy. This is Epistemics, and his name is Imran Hussein. Now, him and I, we've got a long history, and I played this in one of the videos that I responded to of his, where I showed that we had a conversation in 2014, I think it was, where we decided that we're going to have a session, just him and me, just to talk about atheists a little bit, because he never understood what an atheist actually is. And in the last, I don't know if it was 16 or 14, so it's 4 or 6 years or whatever, he still hasn't managed to do that. He still loves talking about atheists, and he still doesn't understand what an atheist is. So this is another thing, but I think this is quite a nice topic, so let's go for it. I forgot something. I'm sorry, I forgot to click on the audio because I clicked in a hurry, and then if you do things in a hurry, it doesn't work, does it? All right, here we go. Let's try this again.
Considering atheism. If you're an atheist or you're someone that's considering atheism, I want you to do this little experiment. And once you've done this, the outcome may very well be that you actually deserve atheism. What I want you to do.
Okay.
Yes,
I don't know.
sir.
Can it's a little bit soft. Can everybody hear what he's saying?
I can hear him.
So this is quite amazing. His sort of approach is that you might well deserve atheism depending on how you answer some questions. This is quite funny.
Is I want you to take 5 or 10 minutes out of your day today, find a quiet spot, sit down and ask yourself a few questions. The first question I want you to ask yourself is, what is the purpose of my existence? What is the purpose of my life? Now, I'm not talking about the purpose that you give yourself. You know, I want to be a doctor, an engineer, do charity work, travel the world. No, not this type, not the purpose you give yourself. What is the actual purpose of your existence on atheism? The second question I want you to ask yourself is, what's right and wrong?
Stop it one at a time.
Okay,
So what's
I
the
wanted to do
purpose?
all three.
No, let's do
Gonna
one at a
repeat
time.
them endlessly.
Oh, easy. Okay, well, let's just do... Okay, whatever you think. You've watched it in. Do you want to go through all three first? And then we
Yeah,
can-
let's go through all
Okay.
three, because then he's going to repeat them. And let's just do them quickly.
Grounding for what's actually right and what's actually wrong. What do these things even mean on atheism? And the third question I want you to ask yourself is, who am I? What am I? Now, the first question, if you really sit down and think about it, and I'd love to know your thoughts if you've done this. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But the first question, what is the purpose of your existence? I'm sure you'll come to the realization that there is none on atheism. In regards to the second question, in regards to...
All right, let's open it up. I'll just start very quickly, and then we'll pass over to you guys and James and Mustafa as well. To me, that's begging the question against the person who claims or who is of the position that there isn't an ultimate purpose in the universe. And what I understand by purpose is that there's a guidance, that there's a teleological mind that has an intention. And on atheism, obviously, as far as I can tell at least, and I'm open to my colleagues here, correcting me, if we don't believe that there is a cosmic mind that's behind everything, then I'm not sure that we can ever say that there is some sort of cosmic purpose. But to suggest that there is, to me, is begging the question, i.e. that he's assuming that there is, and we have to explain it. And I'm of the view that, hang on, let's rewind this a bit. You need to demonstrate that there must be a purpose. If you could demonstrate that, then I would be at a loss, right? And then I really would have a problem. But if you are going to just assume that there is one in the manner that you phrase that question, I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept, as Hitchens famously put it, I don't accept the grammar of your question. And in this case, you're begging the question against my position. So what you should be asking is there a cosmic purpose? And I, Imran, will demonstrate to you that there is, and then you as an atheist would have to explain from your worldview, once I've demonstrated that there must be a purpose, how you respond to that. That would be a fair question to ask. But of course, in my view, it's begged the question, but I leave it to my esteemed colleagues to give their views.
I'm going to wait until the end of the video, I think, and then give some views.
Mustafa?
Yeah, I think I'm actually more in agreement with Rob here. It's very what do you call it? It's a question that you can ask anybody, and there's nobody really has the answer to this. And there's got to be a lot of assumptions you have to make in order to even ask that question. So logically speaking, you really cannot determine this at all. But yeah, let's continue with the video. If you have any thoughts, Tops, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I've said this a lot of times. I'm not a toaster. A toaster has a purpose. I'm not. Here's a sentence. Let me just put this into the chat. This is, yeah, exactly. Our purpose in Islam is to worship Allah. Great. That's even with.
Oh, great. No, that.
What I say is I believe in accomplishments, authenticity, challenges, compassion, decency, empathy, equality, ethics, honesty, integrity, kindness, logic, love, myself, reason, satisfaction, and much more. Okay, so these are the things that give me a purpose. And you cannot go and say, I'm not talking about the purpose you give yourself. That is the only purpose that you have, because you don't have any purpose. There is no purpose in the universe. There is nothing with this so-called purpose. This is such a silly, such a ridiculous.
Okay, but remember what's going on there. Stops. You are not making the claim, right? What you put there, obviously, I think we're all in agreement with. But their view is, hey, you've got to explain how on atheism there is what the purpose is, and not, as he pointed out, the purpose that you give yourself, because everything you put there is you're giving it to yourself. But what you're saying, there is no purpose, which obviously I agree with, but actually he's again made the claim that there is purpose. So obviously you could make the argument as to why it is, but I think it lets him off the hook if you were discussing this with him, to say, okay, but I don't believe there is a purpose. Then he's going to say, okay, well, justify that, and which I think you could do quite easily. But at no point is he put under pressure to justify that there is purpose.
Now comes my second part, which is what I would do if I would be in a discussion, and that is to ask him, what is purpose? What is your definition, number one, of purpose? And number two, why do you think that what you are doing fulfills some kind of a purpose? Because if you do have some sort of a purpose, then it is predetermined. You cannot go and say, I have a purpose, but I'm still allowed to do what I want. That doesn't work. So if you have a singular purpose, the way that you are claiming all the time that you need to worship Allah, then you don't have a choice, if that is your purpose. Because a toaster can't decide to suddenly be an aeroplane. That doesn't work. And this is why I would ask him, what I would do in a conversation with him, can you tell me your purpose? And tell me where this comes from, and why do you think that this is a purpose for you? This is what I would do in a conversation with him. Okay, second one.
Right and wrong, good and bad. Again, on atheism, you should come to the realization that, well, there is no such thing as objective right or wrong, good and bad. It's all just arbitrary and subjective. And
I'm going to wait to the end of the video, I think, and then say something.
Yeah, I think so. There's two things here. I'm going to post a link in the main chat for everybody. I suggest go watch this. This is by a guy called Ozymandias Ramesses. We had him on about 2 years ago. He talks about objective morality, but he talks about it from a different point of view. He openly concedes that it's not mind independent. If you take the view that objective morality must be mind independent, then I don't think there is such a thing. If you take the view that Ozzy does in this view, then you could put forward an idea of objective morality. But on the same token, we have to ask our, friend here, Imran, if you're saying that there's, what was the term that he used? That there's no, what I missed the term.
Objective basis for right and wrong.
Yeah. So by the inference there that he thinks that there is such a thing. Right. So it depends. Like I say, this is a much more nuanced discussion than a simpleton like Imran would understand. But it depends which view you take. Right. So if you take a mind independent view, then I don't think there is objective morality. If you take the Aussies view that I've put into the chat there, then you can have objective, but depending on what you mean by objective, that's the key point. And that's often what I ask Muslims, right? At this point, none of these guys really understand the topic, so they sort of just ramble and babble away, and they don't say anything of substance, as we're quite used to. But if you speak to somebody who's more nuanced, they would need to take a view on that, and it's very important which one they do take. And I think based on that, then we can have a discussion. But if I was to respond to it, I would, at this moment in time, I'm of the view that if we take mind independent, then I don't think there is objective morality. And in fact, Ozzy himself in that video above basically says if there are no human minds, then there be no morality. So it is contingent on human beings. So if you take that view, then it's contingent on humans, but you can still have objective, at least on his view, you can still have objectivity, but that's a different objectivity to something like mind independence.
Yeah, and I would go again with the two splits between the two, where I would say, okay, what I think is objective and subjective is always based on my mind. So objectively, I think it should be objective. Let me put it this way: that torturing babies for pleasure is objectively wrong. But everything else, owning another human being should objectively be wrong, but it's not. So we can't say that this is objective because it has been allowed through the ages. So it's very difficult. So what I would ask him is, where do you get the idea from that there is such a thing as objective morality? Why would you get it from your God? And how would you know it is good or bad? Where do you get it from? How do you know that this is good? How do you know your God is good? What do you know the intentions are of your God? And if you go and you keep a slave, is it good or bad? So there's a lot of things that fall into this whole topic of morality, of good and bad and right and wrong, that you cannot go and tackle if you are a Muslim. And this is why I don't understand why they come up with this, because they are bound to lose, and they love coming up with this question when they are talking to non-believers, to atheists. And I don't understand why they do it. They always lose.
The third answer that you should come to in regards to who am I is, well, nothing but an arrangement of molecules, atoms and molecules, and that's it. Now, if you're
okay, this is an incredibly uncharitable and reductionist view, which is, again, exactly what we would expect from somebody like this. But these same quote-unquote arrangement of molecules and atoms, created, music, art, got us to the moon, thinks about the world around us. So this isn't simply just a random arrangement of molecules that's like a rock or something else, right? And of course, we could be uncharitable, and we don't necessarily need to be with regards to him and his mythical ideas. But somebody like that says this is incredibly uncharitable, and most sophisticated theists will never take that view, because that's they'd just be frowned upon by their peers and so forth. So people who think more deeply on this, and there are a lot of philosophers around, and some of them are theists, right, wouldn't take this view. You'll only hear this from sort of internet theists who like to take a reductionist view and uncharitably, as I said, and appeal to their audience. But if we think about it in the broader picture, and we ask the question, well, is it these same arrangement of molecules that can do all of these things? Is there a difference in reality between this arrangement of molecules and a rock? And the answer is obviously yes. Yeah. Right?
Mustafa?
Oh yeah. No, I was actually gonna add something. It's there's like two. At least I have two different opinions on something like morality, just going back to the morality point, I had one view which stated that, which I think that morality is at times a standard that is set by the majority of the populace. But then there are also certain moral standards that are also universal that everybody tends to agree on. But that in itself, you can dive into the both sides as well, and it gets very complex. But then there are certain things that everybody agrees on, such as like killing somebody for no reason is definitely wrong, or like pain, like enjoying someone's pain for your pleasure is like many can agree across cultures that it's very wrong. So you can bring in different cultures, but then so that's my view. And even within Islam, like Islamic society itself, like morality, when you look at Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims, they have also very different standards as well of what is moral and what is not moral. So they have completely different standards. And then when you go into the different sects, it's like there's no certain standard even within Islam.
Yeah. And okay, I think this thing that, okay, we are a collection of molecules, I don't see that as a derogatory statement. If I say, well, the space shuttle or the LHC or a smartphone is just a collection of nuts and bolts, well, yeah, okay, sure. And you can do a lot of stuff with that, with just these arrangements of nuts and bolts. So, to say that this doesn't really mean anything. It's not really meaningful. It doesn't really say anything. And then the other thing that he says, well, who am I? Well, if I am going to get out of a book, out of an old book, out of the Quran, the definition of who I am, that means I'm just an automaton. I'm just somebody who runs around performing rituals, which I am pre-programmed to do. Even though I'm told it's a test, I can't be, because everything is pre-programmed. And that is me. That I'm just a parrot running around repeating some things I don't understand. Okay, for me, that's not enough. For me, that's not enough. For me, I want to be able to sort of determine myself what I want to do, where I want to go, and this is for me to decide in the environment of a social sort of creature. And this is where I would like to go and be. And so,
okay with the answers to all of these questions on atheism. If you're okay with it, it doesn't affect you. It doesn't,
Well, what I don't like about him is that he says, well, you should sit down and think about this for 2 minutes. Well, who the fuck do you think I am? Why the fuck do you think people have not thought about this already? Who the fuck do you think you are that you think that you've come up with this really novel idea, with this really grand question, or these 3 stupid questions that don't even make sense? We have been there. We've already thought about these things. Maybe you have not. But to go and tell us these things is incredibly arrogant and snobbish.
it doesn't cause any agitation, internal anxiety. It doesn't get you to, really think a bit deeper, and you're just fine with it. Well, then you may be someone that deserves atheism. What you've done is you've displayed that you're not really bothered about what makes the things that make you human, let alone being.
The funny thing is that Imran is somebody who does not think. Imran is somebody who does not question. He blindly follows what other Muslims tell him what the Quran says, and then he tells others, well, you're unable to think. So he's turning everything around that actually he is doing. And this is quite sad for me to see. It's a waste of his mind, because he does not understand what he's doing, and yet he has the audacity to tell other people, well, you need to think more. That's crazy.
Atheists, you can be whatever you like. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But if you're really concerned about being a human being, and you really want to get to the bottom of things, then if you do this little experiment, you should realize that atheism just doesn't sit well. It doesn't fit well. It doesn't add up for human beings. The very things that make us human, it strips us from. And if you realize this and you're not okay with that, which we shouldn't be, then I really encourage you to start looking further, beyond atheism. And I would really encourage you to look into Islam, because I believe this is the truth from our Creator, the one that created us, the one that created us for a very specific reason, a purpose, which He outlines in the Quran, the one that gave us an understanding of right and wrong, an internal understanding, and then supported this via revelation, which again is in the Quran, the final revelation. And on top of this, who defines what we are as human beings, who we are, pick up a copy of the Quran if you haven't done so already. That is, if you are amongst those who are not okay with the conclusions or the outcomes of atheism in regards to the things that we've just mentioned. And read it for yourself and see what it says to you. I'll leave you guys with this. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Till next time, take care.
Yeah. Please pick up a copy of the Quran. It's the quickest way of making you an atheist.
The irony of that statement is most non-believers know the Quran far better than the believers of Islam. Unfortunately, that is the reality of the situation.
What he did at the end there, I'll start with like what he said at the end, and I'll maybe give a couple of my thoughts on the earlier stuff. But what he did at the end there was sort of clever or sneaky, because what he did is he basically appealed to the kind of common emotion people have of anxiety when people think about sort of life and purpose, because, you know, it can feel nasty to think like, you know, there might be nothing happening after I die. That makes me feel anxious. Like there might be no sort of a universe-wide purpose for me. That kind of thing makes people anxious. And there might be good reasons kind of in our evolutionary kind of history or our psychology for us to feel anxious. But just because we feel anxious about something, kind of he's then saying that if you aren't anxious, then you deserve atheism and are bad in some way. And he's also implying that the fact that you feel anxious about there perhaps not being an afterlife where you kind of live in a theme park the whole time, like he's saying that if you feel anxious about the possibility of there not being an afterlife, then that kind of implies, or that should give you evidence that kind of your belief that the idea is untrue. That kind of like true conclusions kind of must not make you feel anxious is kind of what he's getting at. And so then he's saying, but whereas Islam will be true because it kind of tells you more what you want to hear, and say that you'll kind of just be happy forever after this kind of period of suffering. You'll just be happy. You will not grieve in Jannah. So that's what he did at the end. And like some people who are kind of feeling a bit lost might kind of fall into that trap. He's kind of definitely selling it at atheists or people who are kind of non-religious, who kind of still feel some sort of anxiety about it, but like don't want to sort of think too deeply and that sort of thing. So potentially this might have worked on someone like Jordan M, for example. Earlier in the video, kind of what he's getting at underneath all his questions is divine command theory, which is the idea that only God can give purpose, and that it's good to fulfill that purpose and kind of bad not to fulfill that purpose. But divine command theory is really totally exposed by Euthyphro's dilemma, and anyone who doesn't know what that is should like Google Euthyphro's dilemma and go to the Wikipedia article, and it shows like there's a section on criticisms that show a bunch of consequences of making this claim that imply, for example, that all morality is totally arbitrary, that God could like sort of say that your purpose is just to suffer and that would be meaningful. So for example, like he's trying to say like, oh, you can't give your own purpose, only God can give you purpose, and only God can give you right and wrong. But okay, if we take that view and assume that it's true, kind of then he's obligated to agree that if it were the purpose of that God had in mind to just kind of watch us like he's watching a video game of The Sims and just watch us suffer, and no matter whether we're good or bad, kind of after we die, we'll just cease existing, let's say. And that the only reason, his only purpose in doing that was just to amuse himself. So say that's true, then Imran would have to say that that's a good thing, and that it's good for you to be as amusing as possible to this creator who's kind of torturing you for no reason. Okay. Whereas, but you have to ask, like, if that were the case, and this whole world is just created just to amuse God, then and we're just going to suffer and die at the end of it, then is it really more meaningful to kind of act in accordance with God's purpose? Or is it more meaningful for a person to kind of decide, well, I want to be a good person. I want to make the world better. I want to find the truth. I mean, obviously, the latter set of purposes are more meaningful. So this is another sort of kind of refutation to this type of moral system that's based on divine command theory. The final point I'll make is that, so even though he's kind of making the claim like, but we offer objective morality, he has no way of showing that his supposed objective moral system is actually true. Like, he has no way of showing that the Islamic religion is true. So his claim that he has objective morality because he has the laws of Allah would be no different from me saying, well, I have objective morality because I follow the guidance of Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is like objectively the best moral system. Like, how could I possibly prove that? Like, I mean, with Islam, I think it could be possible to kind of prove that Islam is from a kind of non-human source if it did do anything that's genuinely sort of beyond human ability. But he can't. But there is no evidence of that. There's nothing about Islam that's beyond human ability, and all evidence shows that it was created by humans. So his claim. So even though all his claims are kind of based on him, sort of, I have divine command. I have objective morality. I have the objective truth. He doesn't actually have the objective truth. And so I kind of went through these kind of topics in more detail with a Muslim who kind of emailed me. And so if you could maybe paste this link in the live chat, then people can read on some of these musings in more detail.
Yep, no worries. Post it in there.
Whoever wants to go next.
Yeah, nice one, James. I think there's a good summary of the points there, and there's more. There's more to say on it, right? But the Euthyphro dilemma, I think, is a significant impediment to the religious people, and typically at least the theistic philosophers try and claim that there isn't, it's not a true dichotomy. There's the third option. And when you examine that, as I've got a nice recording on this from not Graham Oppie, Jeremy Coons, I think it is, who talks about this. And maybe we should talk about that at some point. Maybe we can do it on Discord or whatever, and I'll show you that. It's a fascinating discussion, but it doesn't actually get them out of the dilemma. And as you say, that dilemma, I think, is still significant, right? The theists just have heard that there's this third dichotomy, and Yusuf Pondus, who's one of the sort of apologists that isn't totally turned to the dark side, so to speak, tried to answer it, but he wasn't really that familiar with it and kind of rambled a little bit there. But they can't get out of it with once you impose the Euthyphro dilemma, I think.
Okay. Listen, Rob, do you have more material on this?
Well, I've got the video that I took the notes from, where Coons was responding directly to William Lane Craig. So this is now, we're talking at the highest level of philosophy, right? We're not talking your internet people, your Sabuas and Tsortzes and all these low people. We're talking about the really high level and the responses that were given there. Some of it is I'm not sure whether most of the audience here, because some of it is a bit dry, some of it's a little bit more in depth about the good making properties of God and stuff. I think most people will get it, but it might be a little bit dry for some people. But I have got that, yeah.
And you're not available on the 25th?
No, I'll definitely be doing Christmas. That
and the first is also because I would love to make this a topic so that people can refer to it later, because we do come across this a lot of times, and we come across a lot of people that come up with this third option, which is ridiculous once you go and investigate this a little bit. But it would be really great if we could have one session, one episode of the Gin and Tonic Show, and say, okay, let us address the Euthyphro dilemma and clarify why the third option is not really a third option, but it falls under the dichotomy once again, the dilemma again.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Go ahead, James. I think you wanted to say something there.
So I forgot one of the earlier points, but so on the Euthyphro dilemma, kind of like, even when you kind of look at the high level arguments about it, what seemed clear to me was that the attempts by theists to kind of say that there's a third option are really just kind of like dressing up the two horns of the dichotomy in kind of whatever answer they give, kind of, it boils back down to the dichotomy. Exactly. There's still no way out of it. It's just like
correct.
Up. And there's one other thing I kind of wanted to say is that when you think about it, there's like an ontological question and an epistemological question. There's the nature of morality, like the ontology, whether it exists in a objective way or a subjective way. So that's one question. But whatever the answer is to that question, kind of, you're still left with the epistemological question of how do you find out how do you get close to what is kind of right or wrong. And so Muslims, even if Muslims make the claim that they have the ontological thing, they have the objective morality, like they still in no way have kind of an objective epistemology. They don't have a sort of valid or reliable epistemology. Like they don't have any advantages there, because every single human being kind of is put on this earth with a brain, and when this brain starts thinking about what should I do, that kind of basic question, kind of like every human being is in the same position when they kind of start their lives. And so there are two kind of responses. Like one group of responses would be to try and use your human reasoning, your human intellect, to sort of judge that, oh, I found a sort of an authority to kind of delegate my moral decision making to, my moral kind of truth seeking to, and this authority is kind of Islam. And so I'll use my kind of human rationality to kind of delegate responsibility to Islam. That's one kind of response. And the other kind of response is to, throughout, always kind of try and use your own human sense-making faculties and reason to try and think about which moral decisions are fair or consistent, and try and build. And you're basically going to look for the sort of combined truth of, the combined efforts of philosophers and ethicists and the fields of like ethics and morality, and see kind of what makes sense there, and always use your kind of best human sort of effort and reasoning. And so number one to observe about this is that both of those courses ultimately rely on the initial step, which is to have to use your own human reasoning and intellect. So just saying like, oh, but we have an objective religion and it has objective morality. No, even if it were objective, which you don't have any reason to believe, but even if it were objective, you're still having to use your sort of human sort of epistemology, your human kind of sense making and rationality first. Secondly, you have to think about like kind of given that we are ultimately kind of using our best kind of human sense making abilities to try and get close to moral truths, no matter what. Kind of, you have to ask which approach is likely to be more successful and more reliable. You know, delegating responsibility to a 7th century kind of caravan robber to make our moral decisions, or trying to kind of combine our human, or not turning off your kind of moral compass after sort of declaring allegiance to some Bedouin kind of pedophile and slave owner, but instead working in collaboration with kind of the greatest thinkers throughout the ages on the questions of ethics and morality. Like clearly that option is going to be better than the first option. So given that we should all be able to show that Islam is false, kind of, and give tons of evidence for why Islam is false and why all the arguments in favor of Islam are invalid, like therefore, even if we are kind of left over with this kind of tricky situation of like not having a sort of nice objective epistemology, like the only thing we can use is our sort of human intellect, we're still better off going with like what philosophers and ethicists kind of think about these questions, tackling the human condition, the combined sort of standing on the shoulders of giants, working on developing the ideas. All that's going to be more reliable than just like taking the as the final word these kind of edicts from a time when slavery was legal and child marriage was legal and killing. So yeah, like those are some of my thoughts. Sorry about that.
That's all good. I'll post this again, right? So here's the third option. Hopefully YouTube will allow it. It rejected it again.
What, was the URL too long or?
No. Just maybe it'll go through now. No, it's still not allowing it for some reason. I don't know what I've done that didn't allow it there. But this third option is what I was sort of pointing to. No, it's just not accepting it. It's just claiming it's spam. All right. Well, we can always do it another time. But I absolutely agree with you, right? But of course, James, they will claim that it's not this, this Bedouin in the thing. This is actually, he's just a mouthpiece for God. But then, as you say, then if we critique that and go down the line with that, we end up and find out that it isn't in fact objective. And if what they mean by objective is mind independent, If they don't mean mind independent, then we can make an argument for objective morality as well, and it would be very difficult for them to reject. But if they do say mind independent, then, and they're going to claim, well, God isn't a mind, or it isn't human mind, because they shift the goalpost. This is what Imran did recently, was shift the goalpost and say, no, all I mean is not human mind. But then you could ask the question, what if it was a superior alien race that came down and presented morals and said, look, we've been watching you guys for 2,000 years. We know what's right and wrong, because let's show our advanced level of biology. We can show you all of the, these amazing techniques and technology and our abilities to read your minds and understand your biology and your psychology and all the rest of it. And we know what's good for you. Would he accept that? Well, clearly not. So what they really mean is it's beyond any conscious mind in the universe. But that's just begging the question against somebody else, right? So whichever way they go with this, they're in certainly, these sort of guys. And like I say, we can go through Craig's response here, because, that's kind of more high level. But people like Imran and these sort of people don't really understand this, and their responses are extremely weak, to say the least. But the sad part is they don't even realize it, right? It's not like you can have a nuanced discussion with these guys, because it either bypasses them or they just don't tackle it in any way head on.
Yep. This is the problem. This is why I would like a whole episode on this, because I think it's an important topic, and I think it's good to have this, that we can refer to this later on and say, go to this episode and go and understand what the dilemma actually is. Yeah. We'll have to see if we can fit it in at some stage.
I'm sure we can.
Yeah, the Wikipedia article, the fifth row dilemma, has something. It's a wonderful section on that page, where if you go to the criticisms of the God says what is good, or good things are good because God says so. If you go to the criticism section, it's just like chef's kiss. Is just like 5 kind of total knockdown. Like if anyone feels happy accepting those, then they're clearly utterly ridiculous. And like kind of their only hope is to try and kind of basically muddy the waters, essentially, and say that there is a third option. But
exactly,
if you
that's all it is. Yeah,
there's a good a video by Carneades. If you go on YouTube and search Carneades, which is spelled Carneades. I'll guess it. I'll post it in the comment section below in a minute. Like you fifth row dilemma there. Then he sets it very clearly what the dichotomy is, and in each horn what is violated. Like in one horn, very clearly, like if you say that what is good, or things are, or if you say that God says to do things because they're good, then you're violating God's omnipotence, because there is something that is set a certain way that's independent of him and happens prior to him, which is the good. If on the other hand you say that things are good just because God says so, then that basically makes morality meaningless, makes it arbitrary, and all sorts of kind of things that are just like absurd, but they have to kind of swallow and bite the bullet on.
Dependent on the source, yeah.
And here's the option, right? Here's what Craig says, right? Craig says the third option, God wills it because he is good. But now Koons asks, are the good-making properties of God good because God possesses them? Or does he possess them because they are good? I couldn't fit the D on. And then it goes into a bit more of a discussion. So all it does is push the dichotomy back one step, and this is the response. So, take a screenshot of this or do whatever you need to do to grab this. But if you ever get that this is the third response and you get a theist that understands it and can accurately represent it, then here is the response to that. And then, the conversation follows on from there.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear what Craig has to say to this, because, come on, you can't do anything with it.
Can you post that YouTube link in the live chat as well, if that's okay?
It doesn't take it.
Sure. You mean James's link we can post? Yeah, there's a YouTube video link, I think he means.
Oh, yeah. This one, yeah.
Yeah, that at the bottom.
Okay, gentlemen, we've come again we're over 2 hours now. So we're going to come to an end, and there's 2 things for me to still do. One is the Hadith of the week, which is in Bukhari 1, Book 4, number 148, which is narrated by Aisha for a change. So she says, the wives of the Prophet used to go to Al-Manasi, which is a vast open place, to answer the call of nature at night. Now Umar used to say to the Prophet, let your wives be veiled, but Allah's apostle did not do so. But one night, Sauda bin Sama, the wife of the Prophet, went out at Isha time, and she was a very tall lady. Umar addressed her and said, "Ha ha ha, I have recognized you, O Sauda." He said so as he desired eagerly that the verses of Al-Hijab, the observing of the veils by the Muslim women, may be revealed. So Allah revealed the verses of Al-Hijab, the complete body cover excluding the eyes. Now, number one, those verses or this chapter of Al-Hijab does not exist in the Quran, is missing, was deleted, or was forgotten. We don't know. And the second thing is, it shows us how stupid it is, because if she was a very tall lady, then you will recognize her even if she is veiled. So this doesn't really make any sense
And
either.
what's funny is that it's Umar who's giving the idea for
Exactly.
God's verse, but he's not a prophet. And second, like, the purpose of a hijab is to wear it while you take a shit in the fields.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it reminds me of a year ago in a live chat of a sort of stream on YouTube. I got a bunch of Muslims so angry when I sort of said, yeah, by the way, do you know that the reason why Muslim women wear the hijab is because Umar used to watch them going to the loo and harass them, and asked Muhammad to make them wear the hijab, and so Muhammad started making them wear the hijab after Umar kind of harassed his wife while she went to piss that night in the field. And they were like, "No, that is slander." They're so outraged by that idea, because one, it kind of makes Umar look like just like a thug of some sort. It makes Muhammad and Allah look weak and like ridiculous, that they're just obeying this kind of a thug who kind of like shouts harassment and stuff while women are trying to kind of do their business at night. Yeah, it definitely, like, if not in this version of the Hadith, another version of the Hadith, it kind of says explicitly that it was because the women used to go out at night to piss, basically. And so, yeah, like, along with the fact that it's kind of like, yeah, clearly Umar came up with this idea, not God. Kind of, yeah, it's a very funny one. It makes them very agitated, and they don't like it when you kind of tell them about it and like give them the summary, and then they have to check it, and then they kind of see, I can't do anything.
And the second thing I need to do is to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And if we don't see each other, a Happy New Year. And we'll see you in 2021. But there is going to be a show. I don't know in what configuration, but we'll see.
Definitely, and thanks very much to everybody. Thanks to guests James and Mustafa, as always. Thank you to the audience as well. And yes, we'll be back whenever the next show is. And wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I know this is something that somebody like Catch-22, his brain can't really understand this. I'll explain it like I would to a child. We don't believe that the idea that Christmas refers to is true, but we accept that we live in a country where this is celebrated, and we celebrate it as atheists, not that we believe that Jesus was resurrected or that it was his birthday or whatever it is. I actually don't even remember that's how long ago it is. We simply accept that it's a holiday and we spend time with family, friends, or whatever. I appreciate that may not be something we can easily understand.
Easter is the resurrection.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah, Easter's the resurrection, so it's his birthday, isn't it? Yeah, I mean,
it shows you how little we know about Christianity.
Yeah, it just shows how much I've forgotten about it, right? But I thought I'd explain it.
Thanks, Mustafa. Thanks, Rob. Thanks everybody. Thank you very much. If I don't see you next week, have a good one. Thank you very much for 2020 for doing everything here. If you do feel like popping in on the 25th, go ahead and do so, and on the 1st as well. If not, I'll see you the next year.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.